Our next guest, retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor, is a senior fellow with the American Conservative. He's also a former advisor to the SecDef during the Trump administration and a decorated combat veteran. He recently wrote an op-ed concerning the war in Ukraine, and the title of this article is so fitting. It's called, "Make Peace, You Fools." It explains how America's proxy war with Russia has transformed Ukraine into a graveyard. Joining us now, Colonel Doug Macgregor, to talk more about the latest. Colonel, let's start with the latest actually on this stuff in Alaska before we get to Ukraine and more aid and more money. I don't think they did that when Trump was in charge. I don't think they would have the guts to do that. I mean, I know they're always messing around in the air and sometimes the water, getting close with like one plane, one ship. But full-on exercise with both of them coming together, you're a little older than me. Have you seen this before? Because I don't remember hearing about stuff like this going on our doorstep.
Well, there have been some joint exercises involving the Chinese and the Russians and also some Indian warships in the past. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that under Trump, he tried to limit the confrontation with China to the business world,
right,
to economics. Whereas our friend Joe Biden has actually pushed U.S. naval power and air power into Chinese waters, more recently in the Strait of Taiwan, which internationally is recognized as Chinese water. So I think what you're really seeing is that we've been behaving like a big schoolyard bully, and now someone has punched us in the face and we don't like it. But I think we need to think carefully from now on about invading other people's airspace and other people's territorial waters. I think that's really what it's all about. Beyond that, just remember that there are 300 ships in the Chinese Navy. Everybody points to that and says it's larger than ours. But don't forget that 100 of those vessels are Coast Guard vessels. And if we were to lump the Coast Guard in with the United States Navy, we'd be close to that number too.
Gotcha. I want to talk about that poll that I discussed earlier, because more and more Americans are saying no more aid. I think people are waking up to the fact, this is 60-some% if we have that. They're saying, no, pump the brakes. I'm tired. I mean, we're up to, I don't even know what we're up to. Do you, Colonel? Is it 200 billion? I lost track ages ago when we were at like 168. I don't even know what the hell we're at. But the majority of Americans are now saying, I'm done. Stop sending money. We want more facts and details about what's actually going on over there.
Well, I think we're at the beginning of that. I think it's going to get progressively worse. People are also beginning to ask why we're spending $1 trillion on the Department of Defense, and it turns out we really can't fight very effectively against anybody who can fight back. So there's something wrong with that picture too. I think the war in Ukraine has gone disastrously wrong, and the sad part is that we are now at perhaps the most dangerous point in this entire conflict or crisis. And that comes when the regime that's losing is close to collapse and may disintegrate at any moment. We're already seeing that happen in the field. Company-sized elements in the Ukrainian army, 100 to 200 men under their officers, are surrendering to the Russians. Not because they're cowards, not because they don't want to fight per se, but they don't see any point. Their losses have been so horrific, as you pointed out earlier, they simply don't see any point in being killed needlessly on the battlefield. They're beginning to wonder why they shouldn't remove Zelensky, and I think that's the other piece of news. There was apparently a plot to remove Zelensky. Oh. I think we're going to see more of that in the future.
Really? I did not hear about that one. That is news to me. Thank you, Colonel, for that little tidbit.
Yeah. Oh, no, they've confirmed it. It's real.
Really? Well, I mean, he's out there running around acting like a movie star, doing all these meet and greets with people and just pushing for more and more war. That's why I want to go back to your op-ed that you put out, because, again, I thought this title was so fitting. Colonel, why don't they? Why don't we see, and you and I know why, but we just got to wake more people up. Why don't we hear them saying, well, let's talk peace, peace?
Well, there are two things I think that we need to keep in mind. Thus far, the Russians, after moving into the portions of Ukraine that were historically Russian and are inhabited by Russians, decided to fight a defensive war. And the Ukrainians have obliged by attacking these defenses they can't possibly penetrate. But I think the Russians are beginning to understand they can't win this war on the defense. Russians have over 300,000 combat troops sitting in reserve. I think the Russians have kept those in reserve in anticipation of a stupid move on the part of the Poles, Lithuanians, even the U.S. to move into Western Ukraine. But I think they're beginning to understand that that may not happen because public opinion in Poland, not just in the United States, is turning against the Ukraine war. The battle cry in the run-up to elections in Poland is Poland first.
Yeah.
Poland before Ukraine.
There we go.
So I think things have changed there. But here in Washington, of course, if there's still money to be wrung out of this thing by essentially laundering money through the Defense Department to the defense industries, it's going to continue a little bit longer. And then, of course, you have the sad truth. No one wants to stand up in Washington and admit they were wrong. We said Russia was weak. We said the Russians were incompetent. Oh my gosh, I guess we were wrong.
Yeah, so it's a military-industrial complex wanting to still make money, and it's politicians with too damn big egos to admit they screwed up. Colonel Doug Macgregor, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thank you, sir.
Sure, thank you.
Yep.